Welcome back to another episode of the Capes and Tights podcast right here on capesandtights.com. I'm your host, Justin Soderberg. This week is also brought to you by Galactic Comics and Collectibles at galacticcomicsandcollectibles.com. But this is an episode where we see the return of Brian McAuley, author of books like Curse of the Reaper, which was named Best Horror Books of 2002 by Esquire magazine, as well as his Christmas horror novella, Candy Cain Kills, which was released in 2023 from Shortwave Publishing. But we came on here to really talk about the sequel to that, which is Candy Cain Kills Again, The Second Slaying, which comes out November 12th, 2024 from Shortwave as well. We also touched a little bit on his fall 2025 release about Breathe In. It's called Breathe In, Breathe Out from Poison Pen Press. So this is Brian McAuley returning to the podcast to talk about his books and so much more. Before you listen, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, all those things. Also, rate, review, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and all your major podcasting platforms. But this is Brian McAuley, author of books such as Curse of the Reaper and the Candy Cain Kills series of books over at the Killer VHS series at Shortwave Publishing. Enjoy, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast, sir. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me back. I'm doing really well.
Good. Hold on a second. We do that again because my microphone is not on the right. No, maybe it is. We'll do it again though.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the podcast. How are you today?
I'm great, Justin. Thanks so much for having me back.
Oh, it looks like it's sunny there. Is it sunny in Arizona?
Oh yeah, it's relentlessly hot here on October 14th, which is just delightful. All the fun, cozy fall vibes of 100+ degree weather.
Well, it's like here it's pouring rain in Maine, and we went outside to put my daughter in a car with my wife to bring to daycare, and my son goes, "Why is it raining?" I go, "I don't know, man." But it's like not even like it was like a sprinkling raining. And in New England, you know, that's like we thrive at the idea of these like color changing leaves. Like the changing
Right.
of the colors on the leaves is like it's a tourist thing. It's a thing we love. One of the benefits of living in New England. And then it pours like it did last night and into today, and it's like all the leaves are off the trees now because it was
Oh
windy and
no.
rainy, and it just like all the dead leaves are just like, screw this, I'm not hanging out, and I'm just gonna fall down. So not only is it raining, but now there's just like leaves everywhere out there. So it's not beautiful New England fall yet. It's been a weird. It was cold too. I don't know. You guys are getting all the
I
heat
miss,
from us.
I know. I grew up on the East Coast and I miss having actual seasons, but could be
Yeah,
worse.
that's the thing too. It's like they're like, oh, it was a wet winter or wet summer, so you're gonna have great leaves. You're gonna be vibrant and all that stuff, and it's like awesome. And then the one
And then
windstorm
just
comes and just takes them all out.
just to wipe them away.
But so we talked a little while ago now, and so some things have happened. You've got a book that's come out or coming out, I should say. You have another book announced to come out. But you're teaching. How's it been since the last time we checked in? I mean, has life been amazing, or what's going on? Anything new and exciting?
It's been great. I mean, yeah, it's been super busy. I teach full time at ASU's film school, so I'm teaching screenwriting and TV writing classes there. And I get to recently I've been organizing like film screenings, like for spooky season. I screen The Exorcist for students. We're gonna do Talk to Me next week. It's really fun to be just like immersed in the film and TV world at school and teaching, and then yeah, writing on every morning to keep getting my new work out there. So it's been busy, but busy doing all the things that I love. I really can't complain.
I'm so glad that you brought up Talk to Me because Wednesday of last week here in Bangor, Maine, we had a in conversation between Joe Hill and Keith Rosen. And so it was about obviously Fever Pitch and The Devil by Name. And we have a connection to Joe Hill here in Bangor because his dad, obviously Stephen King. And so Joe had a conversation with Keith, and someone in the crowd always inevitably asks the same question to these people, like, you're a horror writer, what's your favorite horror book? And it's such a weird statement to make because you're like, well, I don't know. And then Joe added to it, was like, well, let's add to it. Add your three favorite horror movies. And he's like, I don't know, man. That puts me on the spot. And so Joe Hill mentioned something about, or Keith mentioned something about Talk to Me. And he's like, I love that movie. I'm just really pissed at it. And we're all like, okay. And he's like, because they had the opportunity to say Talk to the Hand. Name the movie Talk to the Hand.
Oh my God. That is a missed opportunity
It
along the
was,
lines of
but it
like
was,
the
yeah.
magician movie Now You See Me, and then the sequel was called Now You See Me Too instead of Now You Don't. Come on.
It was just great. I was like, oh man. And it was funny too. I'm looking at Joe. I'm like, are you a horror writer or a comedy writer? Because
Yeah.
it was just joke after joke after joke. It was a fun conversation. I learned a lot from Keith is a phenomenal writer. Joe's
Yeah.
a phenomenal writer too in his own right. But it was just kind of funny. Talk to the hand. I'm like, oh, it's a great movie.
I
Talk to Me
love
is a great
that.
movie. So is The Exorcist.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I just spent the morning watching Terrifier 3.
Oh,
So
I
it fits this conversation kind of, right? I mean, talking about spooky holiday, but like Christmas holiday horror is phenomenal in my opinion. I think it honestly might be, it's not my favorite movies. You know what I mean? Like obviously favorite scary movies are not the Christmas ones because
yeah.
there aren't that many really, 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 really good ones. But I feel like it's my favorite to watch, if that makes any sense. I for some reason gravitate towards that. I love Christmas movies, but I want them
Yep.
to be horror movies as well.
I mean,
Can we just
clearly
see
I'm
Rudolph get his head decapitated? Like this just
right. It's such a good combination. I feel like, I've done a lot of interviews where some people are like, "What made you think of combining like Christmas and horror?" And I was like, "I don't know. It seems kind of obvious to me. I mean, it's obviously been done before, Black Christmas and other
yeah.
things, but like, especially, Christmas rooted in Christianity and all the imagery and the blood and the death and the resurrection and like, it's kind of primed for horror. And I feel like Terrifier 3 certainly went there as well with all of those echoes.
Yes.
But also, just the bright lights and the snow and
Yes.
it's just something
Well, it's
about
the
it just works.
cheerfulness. What's the scariest thing really is the unknown, but also like when you're up really high and something bad happens. So like being cheerful and family and opening presents and gift giving and then slashing and murdering. It's like it's a opposite ends of the spectrum. And so when you combine them both together, it kind of gives you like this weird uneasy feeling like this shouldn't be the way it should like is right now. And Eli Roth did a pretty good one with gapping it in the middle there and doing a horror Thanksgiving
Yes.
movie right in the middle of that. But yeah, it's a fun thing in my opinion because I get to watch my Christmas movies, but I also get to be slashers at the same time or horror at the same time. And I'll
Absolutely.
tell you right now, Terrifier 2 to me was near perfect in so many levels. I think that movie was just phenomenal. Terrifier 3 does not live up to doesn't live up to that in my opinion, but it's really hard to keep
Yeah.
good. Star Wars knows this, right? To keep making really good films, it's really hard to just keep that momentum rolling. But I think they did it well enough financially that we'll probably get a fourth one for sure. Now
Yeah.
that
I mean, I'm just such a fan of indie, like seeing
yeah,
indie horror succeed on this level that is just so not just like inspiring, but also kind of affirming, and it breathes, life and interest into our genre so that, rising tide lifts all boats. And so certainly, especially for anybody who's read Curse of the Reaper, I'm a big
yes,
fan of franchises that never end. So
yes,
I will never kind of begrudge a franchise. Just like, yeah, we're going to do another one because that one
yeah.
was a success. So we're going to keep going. And I'm like, why would you not? Like, yeah.
And it's not just that. Someone brought a point up when they were doing a conversation about Terrifier was the fact that when's the last time we had such an iconic villain character in a horror movie like this? Like, if you think about on the big Mount Rushmores of horror slasher films, your Freddy, your Michael, your Jason, you have all those crazy characters. But let's be honest, what has lived up to that since
Mm,
those characters really? Or Scream, you have obviously have a Ghostface too, but like that's probably the last really big one. And I think Art the Clown now slides into that slot with being like, okay, yeah, we'll be in one of those top 6, top 5 style iconic horror characters. And Damien Leone's killed it, and so has David Howard Thornton in that sense. Plus, they just like to freaking gross you out too.
yeah. There's a glee that goes along with it that, yeah, people are enjoying for sure.
Like holy shit, like come on man. And then that's the thing is a lot of that's the problem they're trying to get around too, is that like I thought, like I said about Terrifier 2, is there was heart, there was a story, there wasn't just killing people. And something that people look at these things, including things like your books like Candy Cain Kills and the sequel, is that there's more to it than just slashing and killing, like
Hmm.
trying to get past that, like, oh, they're just trying to gross people out. I'm like, no, Damien Leone is trying to make a good film too. This is not just like him out there being like, I'm going to make a splatter movie just to make a splatter movie. He's trying to make a good movie too. So I think they're trying to learn around that, but I mean, they made like $20 million this weekend in the box office, so I don't think they're having a problem with it.
Yeah. No, it's certainly important to me, like both as a writer and as a
Yeah,
reader and viewer, is like I need to care. Like I love a good gory set piece as much as the other, the next horror fan, but everything in between has to kind of keep me invested and interested. So
yeah, and that's important. So you have Candy Cane Kills, which was the second, no, third, second,
second with the
second
Killer
VH,
VHS. Yep.
second Killer VHS book that came out last year, which was I think well received. I loved it. I was super excited to hear when you would talk about a sequel. For those who don't know what this is, do you want to quickly just glance on what Candy King Kills is?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's about a family who's kind of reaching a breaking point, the parents and two young siblings. And the parents might be on the verge of divorce. The brother and sister are quarreling, and the dad has this, brilliant idea to take them from LA to this secluded wintry cabin in the mountains to sort of mend their bonds over Christmas. But when they arrive, they find out that at this particular house 10 years ago, a family was brutally murdered on Christmas morning. There is this local legend of the Candy Cane killer. And that killer may be back for more festive mayhem.
Okay, well, let's start with that a little bit. I think we might have touched on it a little
Yeah.
bit, when you talked last hour or right around that time because I don't remember. I want to say that you like announced it right before it. Like the splash image of just the two with the candy canes. I think we did talk about that.
Yeah.
Did you this story was planned, you ended this story and that was basically the end of it, right? Like this wasn't like if I get a chance to write a sequel, I've had something. It was more like you probably had some ideas in your head, but like this was you were writing one single Killer VHS installment and there wasn't a plan from the beginning for a sequel, right?
Yeah, it was not, a built-in kind of guarantee thing. I mean, when you're writing a slasher, there's always that notion of like leaving a door open for a sequel because that's the slasher structure. But I was invited to write, to pitch and write an original entry for this Killer VHS thing, and I knew I wanted to do a Christmas slasher. And Alan, the editor there, did say, like if this is successful enough, there's a chance we could do a sequel, but we'll kind of see. But it certainly wasn't anything where I knew it was going to happen. So I did kind of tee up at the end of the first one a general idea of where the sequel would go, but all I really knew was I wanted to, if I did a sequel, it would pick up immediately where the first one ended. The first one takes place on Christmas Eve, ends on Christmas morning, and much like Halloween into Halloween 2, just like immediately picks up where it left off. I wanted to do that, but instead of setting it at the hospital, it would be set at the church in this town of Nodland. But I had no idea what else the story was beyond that until the opportunity came and the first book was a success. And Alan was like, okay, well, do you want to do a sequel? And I didn't say yes immediately because I was like, give me a minute to kind of do some outlining. That's my process. I'm a big outliner. And it wasn't until I cracked the ending of Candy Cain Kills Again, the ending of the sequel, that I really knew like, okay, now not only do I want to, but I feel like I have to write this and I have to find the arc that builds up to that ending because it felt like a satisfying way to go for the
Yeah.
sequel.
Yeah. Do you know, and now there's 5 or 6 coming out or came out of these Killer VHSs. Do you still have that, now you have the mantle up, you're the first one with 2? Is that like you're still
Yeah,
thinking
it
you
is
guys
it
are all
is
cool and
still
all, but I've got 2.
got the sequel, which adds, I think that the Killer VHS, like, I was gonna say franchise, which I guess you could call it.
Yeah.
It's its own series and sort of franchise unto itself. And I love that Alan is bringing in, new writers with every
Mhm.
entry. But I think, yeah, my sequel is number 5. And so kind of early on, kind of
Yeah.
playing as well with the Goosebumps for grown-ups. There were
Yeah.
multiple Night of the Living Dummies and multiple Monster Blood, so there's kind of a precedent for having a sequel. But it's been so cool to every time a new Killer VHS is announced and
Yeah.
seeing who's going to write the next one and what's their kind of new spin on this format. It's just such a fun thing to be a part of and to see readers really loving and embracing them. And now to have enough that there are readers who are posting images of like all 5 books
Yeah.
lined up together. And we're like, this was always the dream of like the kind of beautiful collector image of that.
It's phenomenal. And I always say whenever I talk to someone, I talk to you, I talk to Joshua and other people who have done Killer VHS too. They also like when they buy it on their website, Shortwave's website, you get this little like member card, like you're going to rent your VHS tape at Blockbuster, which is phenomenal in that sense. I actually have two of them, so I gave one to my son. My son's like, "What is
Yes.
this?" He's 3.5. He's like, "What is this thing?" I'm like, "You'll never actually know. You probably won't even know what a VHS tape. You'll know what a VHS tape is because of me and my nostalgia love for them. But like other than that, you're not going to know that."
Yeah,
But yeah,
exactly.
I was just trying to look it up. I don't think there was Monster Blood 2 came out as number 18 in the Goosebumps. So it
Oh,
took 18 books for a sequel. And yours only took
yeah.
5 because that's how good it was, right? But Alex will always get to be the number one. Like Alex will always and forever be the number one killer VHS, and then you'll be the person who had 2 on there as well. And they're both phenomenal. I think they're both similar but different in a sense. Yeah, they have different feels to them. They can tell that you wrote them, but they have different feels to them, which is also pretty cool. And then you wrote this pretty quickly then, right? I mean, like not quickly, but quickly in the
Yeah.
sense that you did this Killer VHS. Was this came out 2023 or
Uh,
22?
what year are
I'm
we
trying.
in? We're in
24.
2024 now, right?
Yeah.
So it was 2023, November of
Yeah.
2023 is when the first book came out. And it was, in November that Alan and I first talked about like the idea of the sequel. And so I started outlining, and once I had a full outline and got the approval, it was like off and running. And yeah, it was a pretty quick turnaround of kind of writing and revising.
Hmm.
But for me, it is a novella, so it is shorter than a full
Yeah.
length novel. But also, I think the first book is pretty fast paced, but the second book is even more like from page one, it's just kind of a locomotive train that doesn't really stop. So that momentum helped me write it pretty quick too. But it was, and I appreciate you saying it. I really wanted to. I knew if I was going to write a sequel, I was like, okay, I need to find that sweet spot of like delivering what the first one did, but also not being just a carbon copy. And so there were a few different things that I consciously knew I wanted to change, including having Candy Cain POV first person be
Yeah.
part of the narrative, which was a very different approach than the first book to make it a kind of fresh experience.
Well, I think a sequel to a novella, first of all, I don't. It's not a super common thing in the first place because a novella is a shorter story for a reason,
Yeah.
and because it's more of a concise telling of a story. It's maybe a story only needs that many pages to actually tell it. But if you told it in the exact same way and it was had the exact same feel as the first one, wouldn't it just be the next chapter? Like, wouldn't it just be now you could just combine these two into a novel and been like, we could have just written a novel? So having a different feel and a different take on it made it seem like, okay, that's a story they need to be told. And then this is the next story they need to be told.
Totally. Yeah, no, and I kind of and when I pitched it with Alan, the first book, a big reference point was Black Christmas. Like
Mhm.
it's a group at a house, and there is a killer kind of on the fringes and in the walls and the creepy spaces of the house, picking them off. But for the second one, I was like, my reference point for this is going to be The Crow, which is a very different reference point because I was like, it's actually going to be much more of a revenge
Mhm.
story, and taking the slasher from the first book and making that character the kind of avenging final girl of the sequel, which to me I thought was a different, a fun way to approach it that I thought would be fun for me to write and fun for readers to have just a totally different perspective on the characters. And also just that it lined up so nicely to have the Christmas Eve book and then the Christmas Day book,
Mhm.
just very cleanly covers the
I mean,
duality.
and they're only what 130, 100 and something pages. So like you could
Yeah.
just read one this year, on Christmas Eve, and then read the next
Yeah.
one on Christmas Day, and you all get your little horror fill, your slasher fill around the Christmas season. One thing I hope that doesn't happen with Candy Cane Kills is there's not like 17 different remakes of it,
Oh yeah.
like there has been with Black Christmas. So I'll leave it at that. I mean, the
Yes.
original is I love the original. The other ones that came after that was like, okay, you get updated technology, updated graphics, things like that. But I'm like, come on, OG, yeah, don't remake this a bunch of times now, please.
Yeah, that's inevitable in the horror. But yeah, that I saw the original actually last year in a theater with a packed audience, and it's that original is just still so good, and it predates Halloween and a lot of
Yeah.
the techniques that it used. So
Hmm.
yeah,
I mean, that would actually be a fun, try thing in this is like Killer VHS to be like issue 25. of this to do Candy Cain Kills Again, but reboot it and change some things and like do the horror VHS or horror movie, thing by rebooting something years and years later as a fun
Yeah.
just thing. Tell the exact same idea of a story, but mess things up 25 years later or
To,
5 years later,
go,
whatever it
yeah,
is.
to go full meta, and all of a sudden it's the killer Blu-ray series. Like, wait, what's that?
It's all just remakes of the first books, but like slightly changed things. And you're like, okay, that was a male character. We're gonna make that a female character. And that was a
Yeah,
female character. We'll make it a male character. Oh, that was based in this town. We're actually gonna base it in this town and just
yeah,
screw with things to make it. Or have someone else like switch the authors up. Have someone else
yeah.
write Candy Cane Kills and have you write like Melonhead Mayhem or something like that,
Yes.
so that you get a different take on it. We've done that in the brewing industry years ago. The brewery I work for, the neighboring brewery down across town, we did that. We gave them our recipe and they gave us their recipe, and we brewed each other's beers, but with like each other's water, pH levels, hops, grain. There's just different techniques, different systems to see how it would do. They came out roughly the same, but it was kind of funny, like just having someone else take your thing and make it. So that would be an interesting thing to have someone just
Oh yeah.
take Candy King Kills and readapt it into the Killer Blu-ray series.
And do
Well,
a
it'd have to
story
be
swap.
Killer DVD series. You got to go like,
You can't skip a format. You're
next
right.
thing. Yeah, exactly. Or Killer Beta, Killer Laserdisc. Um,
Laserdisc.
yeah, exactly. But so you have this sequel. You now go to write it. You have a thing. Did you accomplish everything you wanted to accomplish in this second book? Or is there a possibility for a third? No. Did you set out when you set out just tell the story the way you told it? And do you feel like, obviously you're trying to pitch this book, so you're going to say yes anyway? But no, do you feel like you accomplished everything you wanted to accomplish in Candy King Kills Again?
Yeah, I think for me, that was one of the reasons I didn't want to say yes until I felt like I really felt totally compelled and had a vision for what the character arcs were going to be. And so, yeah, now that it's all said and done, it feels like, the right kind of sequel. Like at the moment, it's two books, it's a duology.
Mm.
There, I would never say never in terms of another sequel, but I have other books kind of lined up
Yeah.
for the next couple of years. So for now, as I said, the kind of Christmas Eve and Christmas Day pairing, and then the
Yeah.
ending of this book, without spoiling it, to me feels like the right kind of
Yeah.
ending. It
Yeah.
opens up the possibility of like, where do we go from here, but also finds a sense of resolution that I feel really pleased with. And that, my goal, as we were talking about earlier, like, yes, these are campy, gory, funny slashers, but they're character driven and have a certain heart to them that's important to me. And so that also, I wanted to make sure with this sequel is like, can I both up the gore and the over the top violence, but also double down on like the heart of the story. So far, gratefully, the early reviews have been really wonderful. And it's, the two goals were like to have people say like that the death scenes are even more over the top than the first
Yes.
book, and then the book actually made me cry. And I'm like, yes, those were my two goals. Like I want to somehow find a way to do both.
I cried too, but it was just a paper cut on the
Yeah.
page. It was all, Actually, speaking of that, I just saw a video the other day, a picture the other day of like why paper cuts hurt so bad. It's because like there's compressed, obviously, chips of wood, and that these little fragments of paper get stuck in the cut. That I'm
Oh,
like,
so
oh
it's
God.
actually a splinter, but
Yeah,
like
it's
a
like you could look
micros.
so like
Oh,
because it's these microscopic little filament like small things that get stuck in the cut. But yeah, the thing I'll say about the violence, the pacing, or there's a slow build in Candy King Kills because you have to set up the whole story. You have to set up where this family is going, all this other stuff that goes on, the story behind Candy Cane a little bit. When you go into the sequel, it's like, well, shit's already hit the fan. We're already in all this. Like this is like going on. This is happening. This is all like, the craziness. Those people aren't gonna pick up Candy King Kills again without reading the
yeah,
first one. It's pretty crazy to pick up a book that says the word again in it and be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna grab this. Um,
yeah.
I will say you did a phenomenal way of pitching or entering the book by putting the pages together that explains kind of like a little synopsis of what happened in previously on
Oh,
here,
yes.
which is phenomenal. I want people to read it, so I'm not going to do anything with it. But the idea that you jump right in. Like that, you don't have to set up small. I mean, there is a little setup, but like you don't have to like the first few chapters of Candy Cain Kills that you don't need to do it in this. You were able to just jump in. Did that make the book you feel like you had more pages to work with?
It was like both exciting and intimidating because it was like, the setup of a normal story, takes up a certain amount of space to kind of fill out the arc of it. And
Mhm.
this, I was like, oh well, we're just getting straight into it. So I need to like make sure I have enough momentum, but also story beyond that to carry it through. But it was useful to both check in with our surviving characters from the first book and be like, okay, well, what's the new kind of conflict that they're dealing with in this one, aside from, the wild killer that's chasing them through a church, they still have interpersonal stuff going on.
Yeah.
And then also the church offering a new cast of characters to get to know. And also, part of it was, in some ways, this is kind of like a Pearl to X kind of thing
Yeah.
of like the sequel has a little bit of a prequel energy to it because there's kind of flashbacks to how Candy Cane was raised in this community. So that's how I found like enough kind of story to carry it, even though there's no setup. It's just immediately gets going and everyone's dying immediately. Yeah.
Yeah, but I will say, so I live in the world of comics a lot, and we talk at the comic book shop about how too many comics come out monthly. Okay, and comics come out monthly. Most comics come out monthly, and there are very few that actually put the previously on or the last issue synopsis in there, and it pisses me off. You have no idea, because it's a month. Okay, a month is just long enough to actually forget of what's going on there, but not enough time to reread, or
Yeah.
not enough time, but not enough. You don't usually have the time or think about rereading the issue to kind of continue it on. And that's why I
Yeah.
think a lot of people have waited to go to trades and trade paperbacks, because they're like, I'm just waiting till the story comes out before I'm done doing that.
Yeah.
But Candy Cane Kills. I mean, there was enough time. It's a novella, so like if I really, really, really wanted to, I could have, before I jumped into Candy Cain Kills Again, I could have just read Candy Cain Kills and got it over with, so I could kind of like set my brain up and then go, which I recommend, because obviously, like I said, it's a continuation of the story, so it makes sense to do that. But having that previously on in the beginning of this kind of goes, okay, now I kind of under an idea what's going on here, and why I should be reading this, and skipping reading the first book again. Again,
Yeah.
not that you should, but I'm just saying like it's helpful in that sense, because it gave me the ability to be like, okay, I could just jump right in. I don't have to wait and
Totally.
read the other book again.
Yeah, and that was actually Stephanie, Books in the Freezer podcast had, I think, tweeted something about, I wish that sequel books had a previously on section like TV shows do. And I was like, that's a really good idea. And then rather than, yeah, so I took a cheeky approach to that with how I structured the
Yes, yeah,
previously
yeah,
on.
yeah. And again,
Um,
we could tell it, but I really think it's one of those things that I like people, if you haven't and you're listening to this and you don't know what it is, to just
yeah,
open the book and be like, oh shit, this is crazy, this is cool, I like this,
yeah,
and get
yeah.
there from there. I think that's worth holding on to. But we talked a little bit already about like holidays, Christmas, horror. You now have the church involved in this. Like you pissing a lot of people off out there, Brian. Um, but no, but I think it's cool, because I do think that even in the sense of, so I try to, when I go to read books and I'm looking months in advance and putting my TBR together and saying what am I going to read and so on and so forth. Obviously, looking to December, I'm like, I'm going to read Christmas horror. Like I want to read horror, I want to read Christmas stuff. So like let's do it together. And doing the research on it, there's not an insane amount of it. Like there's not, like, it's not easy to do. You could probably find more Christmas, Fourth of July, or summer horror, or sorry, summer horror and Fourth of July horror than you can this Christmas thing. And it is it difficult to do? Is that why? Is it just something that is so niche that people don't, not a lot of people want? Like I said, I am all for it. So was there something that really, you've talked on a little bit, but touching on some more, like really jumped out about you doing this as a Christmas horror?
I don't know why. Yeah, I mean, to me, like I said, it just feels so obvious, especially because for me, like I love like the character-driven drama
Mhm.
built into a horror story. And Christmas to me is full of like family drama. That's when like families come together and all the stuff comes out. And I mean, like if you watch The Bear, they did a whole Christmas episode
Yeah.
that really nails, especially like my family's Italian American, and like man, they really they really nailed how much of a horror show Christmas can be. So to me, that aspect of it was also just felt kind of obvious. And you know, the first book touches a little bit on the kind of Christian
Yeah.
element baked
Yeah.
in, but the second book certainly goes kind of full tilt into it. But yeah, I'm all for every holiday having horror stories attached.
Yeah, I mean, and there obviously is, and in the Christmas season, there is this thing. There's horror stories and books out there based around Christmas, but I feel like there's a lot of anthologies,
Yes.
short stories. There's all that, but it just feels like I don't know. It feels like there's not enough people out there. Just it's not extremely hard in my opinion. Just a shift where when you tell your story to be around the holidays, and I do think that there's this comfortness to the holiday season that you don't you feel like, oh, it's snowing out and there's lights and we're going for a walk and there's caroling and hot chocolate and that's just begs for me to have someone murder someone.
Yeah, I mean the whole notion of Santa Claus is a home invasion story. So I don't know why we're pretending like it's not. Like he has tiny minions. Like
Yes.
he comes down to your chimney while you're sleeping. Like it's already scary stuff. So
And there's only so many times you can tell the Santa Claus story or the
yeah,
Jesus story or any of those stories again. You can only tell those stories so many times before you're like, it's just a that's another reason why I'm a big fan of like Fat Man, those kind of like holiday movies that are just like another take on Christmas and the Fat Man one goes to the point where he's like how shitty it is to actually be Santa Claus because there's like budgets to keep and there's like things coming after you and you can just see his body's just broken down from being Santa and it's just like yeah he relishes the 366th day of the year and then
yeah,
the next year being like and then the day he has to go out and actually deliver presents to snotty nosed kids it's like this sucks I'm bringing my gun with me
yeah.
like like that stuff to me is like it's just a different telling. And again, that's why I feel like maybe that's why I gravitate so much towards Christmas horror is the fact that I've heard the Rudolph story. I've heard all these Santa Claus stories. I want to hear something different. And
Yeah.
taking a family that's trying to work on some shit and taking a family that's trying to vacation and do things like that, and then taking them and having it be a slasher to me just adds that different element that I'm looking for. And so that's where I gravitated towards reading this book first, like the Candy Cain Kills, over a year ago or right around a year ago. And then to follow it up with a killer sequel is something special. And so I thank you for doing that because I think there needs to be more Christmas horror.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and there's so much, as we're saying, like kind of iconography
Yeah.
attached to Christmas and kind of characters like Santa Claus. And that was also, for me, a goal in writing, really in writing all of any slasher that I write. I love the kind of iconic slashers like we talked about, like art is the first kind of in a long time.
Mhm.
So I knew for me part of it was, the first book is a little bit of a mystery as to who or what Candy Cane is, but
Yeah.
by the time we did the sequel, I was like, let's just put her on it's her story. I want her on
Yeah.
the cover. I'm like staring at fan art on my wall
Yeah.
right now that a reader of the first book had sent me. And once I kind of came up with that notion of like this girl in red and white striped pajamas that are overgrown, from
Mhm.
10 years ago, I was like, that image for me sticks in a way that I really love. And it was fun to kind of conceive of my own kind of Christmas slasher in terms of just the visual
Mhm.
element of the character.
And the stained glass from the church and stuff like that. It was awesome with the bleeding eyes. But
Yeah.
the I guess another thing that draws you to Christmas or winter horror is the idea that the difference between red and white, having the snow and
Yes.
having blood on it. And that's another reason why I feel that Terrifier works because they put Art the Clown in a costume that has a lot of white on it, so the blood
Right.
just pops right off his face is white, so the blood splatters on his face, he pops right off of it. And so yeah, that the back of the cover having a snow angel on it that has blood on it is phenomenal as well. Yeah, it's these stories now feel like they belong at Shortwave. Do you agree on that? Like it seems like it fits all these stories. We've now gotten what five that have either been released or about to be released with Candy Cain Kills Again, and then you get the sixth and the seventh one announced. Alan's announced those coming
Yeah.
too in the future. But Like, do you feel that same way? Like after looking at maybe, I'm guessing, have you read all of them? Have you at least glanced through some of them to know that it kind of fits in that place?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I mean, Shortwave and Alan Lestefka there is so thoughtful about, the brand of this company that he has created that is, um, especially the Killer VHS franchise
Mhm.
as its own kind of unit. I feel like he has a vision for Shortwave as a whole, and then Killer VHS is an even more specific vision. And so every author that he chooses and every story kind of fits within the milieu, but also allows enough room for that author to bring their specific flavor to it.
Mhm.
And I certainly think that, I look at what Candy, I mean, for one thing, novellas are not as popular for traditional publishers to publish. You'll see like, someone like Ronald Malfi gets like collections of novellas published, but individual novellas is a much more kind of niche indie market, even though I don't know why traditional publishing is not jumping on this train because especially for horror, I think they're perfect.
And people's
But
attention spans are so small nowadays that like I honestly know people who don't read books when they see the size of it.
yep,
They look at the size of the book, they're like, yeah, I'll read something different because they just want to get something, want to consume something and move on. And so
yeah,
novellas to me are such a like a great thing to slice into your place where your longer books are. But yeah,
I
continue.
agree. Yeah, I think especially with a brand like Killer VHS, and that was something I was very conscious of, that I wanted it to feel like you're watching a movie. And that means it's going to be a kind of shorter experience than a full-length novel, obviously. And I also just think the content, like especially like looking at the cover of Candy Cain Kills Again, I don't think a traditional publisher would have allowed our Mark Volition and Shortwave to go so hard on that cover and let that be
Yes, yes,
on
yes,
shelves.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I hope someday it's at plenty of bookstores. But I do think that in indie press like Shortwave can take those creative big swings and kind of stand out from the crowd as a result of that because
Mhm.
it's beautiful, beautiful artwork. And yeah, I think that it all kind of fits within that brand.
And the cool thing for most people, outside the people who get to read advanced copies of this, like myself, is that they'll get it on November 12th and be right in that season that you're getting ready, you're gearing up to. I don't know how many people. I know I'm one of a few that here and there, like tomorrow, the new Batman Resurrection comes out, the sequel to the original Batman, the 1989 Batman movie comes out, and I'll be like putting down whatever I'm reading and reading that just because I'm excited to read that. I don't know how many people go to the bookstore, buy the book, and like that night they're reading it, or they just put it on a
Right.
stack and so on and so forth. But if you pick it up on November 12th, then you have the ability to now wait or pick it up on November 12th and then pick up Candy Cane again and watch that or read that again and then read the sequel and be right into that Christmas season. I think it's wonderful. I read it like in like I don't know, August, which was
Yeah.
awesome. But it was like, I don't know, it was kind of cool if like I live in New England, so it was kind of cool if it was snowing out and like, Christmassy feeling. I still have
Yeah.
my wife and I last Christmas put up our like a little village we used to put up on a tabletop, but now I have kids, and so you can't put it down that low. So we have it up on top of our cabinets in our kitchen. And I don't remember what happened, but something happened right after Christmas, and it delayed, and got to the point where now it's still up there. We actually haven't taken it down yet. And so now we're
Yes.
like, okay, it's October 15th. We're not taking it down. It literally has been up there all year.
Yep. And
So
that's
I
a
did have that in the room, but
yeah.
yes, the reading it in August wasn't nearly as fun. I would have been reading it in November, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that was something like we were conscious of too, I'm talking to Alan about like, well, if we do a Christmas book, like it's probably gonna, have these peaks every year around Christmas, and
Yeah.
maybe it'll be quiet during the summer. I mean, briefly, a lot of people did read the first book, in the last year,
Yeah.
since the last Christmas season. But I also know that like I think it's gonna even November through December is gonna probably be the peak time that we see more reviews and people sitting down to
Yeah.
dive into this Christmas story, which I'm all about having, that to me is also part of Christmas tradition is like you have certain movies that you watch every season. And I think since they're novellas, they're easier to revisit on an annual basis as well. But it certainly lends itself. I know I've already had some readers telling me they're waiting until Christmas Day to read it. And I'm like, that's awesome.
First of all,
That's
you're sick, but yes, awesome. That's great. It's
yeah. It's
amazing.
like, yeah.
Do you do it with your blood, your glass of blood too? And But yeah,
Exactly.
I think it'd be kind of a cool thing. And, Alan, if Alan's listening, is to do a next year thing in here that comes in like a VHS slipcase looking thing that has 1 and 2 in it, so that you can sell it next year as a duology and have it be in an actual like VHS cape slipcase. You know what I mean?
Yes, there's definitely rumblings. I don't even know I'm supposed to say this because it's nothing, there's nothing official or set in stone, but the
Yes, but you
idea
talk about,
of,
you obviously talk about stuff behind the scenes. So
yes,
this is not like
exactly.
I didn't just say that and be like, oh my god, that's genius, light
Who
bulb
would
went
have
off over
bet?
your head.
Yeah.
Yeah, whoever thought that?
But the
I'm
idea of
sure. Yeah,
like combining them in some capacity, because, together they are the length of of like a short novel,
yeah.
but they are two very distinctive
Hmm.
stories. But the way that they pair in a kind of double feature energy is something that would be fun to lean into even more.
I've seen the people. Have you seen the people on like Instagram who like take the covers off and put their own covers on? I could see someone doing that with it, and they combined it. Someone actually did it. I forget what book it was. Was it the Twilight series? And they did all of the Twilight books, and so the
Oh my
book was
God,
like the book was like
that's
this, and you could like open it up. I'm like, can you imagine sitting there in your desk, your chair, trying to read a book?
that's
It's hard
just
enough to read Twilight in the first place. I mean, I didn't say that, but but yeah, if I could see someone ripping the covers off these stickers and making their own cover and making their own novel, because I mean that's a book. You
yeah,
said it's a shorter book, but no, it's maybe 300 something pages. That's
yeah,
not
exactly.
crazy. And so yeah,
No,
it's kind of fun though. I think that so is it easier this time around to promote this because of the book coming out already?
it's been interesting. Yeah, I feel like I'm so grateful to, the people who supported the first book, especially folks like you, like podcasters
Mm.
and Bookstagram really embraced it. And I think they really embraced the Candy Cane character as well. And so that's the kind of stuff that really warms my heart is people like talking about Candy Cane and saying like our girl Candy Cane is coming back. And I'm like, yay, I'm so glad that you're all rallying behind this character in this way that it kind of has its own momentum, which is really lovely. And as again, like it feels like I don't feel as stressed about promoting it especially until, November, December
Yeah,
really hits and tis the damn season.
yeah,
But it's been, gratefully uh that first book kind of got a big amount of support, especially
yeah.
because it was in the Nightworms December box. I feel
Yeah.
like that got it to a lot of readers. So grateful to Sadie and Ashley for that. Yeah.
It's all cool until someone says my girl Candy Cane's back, and they point to their daughter they named Candy Cane because of
Yes,
this thing.
exactly.
That's when the problem comes into effect. Like, like I will say my daughter's name is Riley Quinn, and Quinn's actually popped in my mind when we were naming my daughter after Adam Caesar's book Clown in the Cornfield, because I'm a big Clown in the
Oh,
Cornfield fan, and
me
Quinn
too.
Maybrick is the main character, and so Quinn was like, oh, that's a name. And I brought it to my wife. She's like, oh, I like that name. And so it's not like she's named after the character, but like that's why I have that name in my head, if that makes any sense. And
Exactly. It's
so,
it's like in your brain stew
yes.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
love
so I
those
was like
those books.
Quinn Maybrook. Quinn is my daughter's middle name because of that. So I wouldn't think it was crazy. However, if you name your daughter Candy Cane, it probably means that she's going to be a stripper. So don't do that.
There's a
Or a
different
serial or
way.
slasher,
Yeah.
or both. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
Adam's
probably not the
Adam's
best thing.
yeah. Adam's books are so good. I just read the third Clown in the Cornfield, and he's just a fantastic writer and person. And I'm just grateful that these kind of these slashers are, yes, we're
I got
seeing
my German copy and my French
yep,
copy. And my wife thinks I'm insane. And someone's like, do you know German or French? I go, no. I saw
yep,
this one first because this cover is just dynamite, in my opinion. And then
it
this
is.
cover is just, it's just so bad, in my opinion. I'm sorry, Adam, but this cover is, it must fit along the lines of what they like to read over in Germany, because to me, this is just over the top. Yeah. And then I think there's one other one that I wanted. It was either Serbia or some other
Well, I
South
know
American country.
I know that Spain, because Adam and I share a Spanish publisher.
Okay.
So they're
Might have been
doing
Spain.
they're doing Curse of the Reaper
Yeah.
this month actually, and then they did the first two clown books already.
Mhm.
and that's Dimensiones Ocultas. They're fantastic. They hire really great artists to do their covers, and that's trippy as well to have a book coming out in another language.
It's weird because there's certain things that you like open it up and there's certain like the the quote on the back is Paul Tremblay's quote. It's just weird. It's really
Oh
weird to me
yeah.
just to see like Paul Tremblay, then it says clown, and then the rest of it's in German.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, okay. It's just, yeah, okay. Because like I would read that. If you read that in the back bottom, you're like, oh, this is an English copy. And then you're like, oh, wait, never mind. That's not. It's also annoying to me, and this is just petty things, but not US editions of books, the spine goes differently. So the spine,
Oh,
when you read, so they go the opposite direction.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and so when I go to put it on the
Oh,
shelf, I'm like, God damn, I want to go this. It's upside down. No, I just got those, and I was like, that's fun. That's my collector in me, is that having those foreign editions that I'll never read. I'll just have them on the shelf, but it's kind of fun. Now I'll have to get Curse because Curse is amazing as well. So
oh, thank
I'm
you.
excited. Quickly on, I wanted to touch on a couple things, but one of the things was, so Candy Cane Kills is the only shortwave killer VHS that has an audiobook as of right now. Is that something that's in your, like, is this something you deal with, or is that some Alan? Like, how did that, like, there's only one. Why is it that Candy Cane Kills is the lucky one?
I feel very fortunate for that, but I mean, yeah, it was a conversation of whether or not audiobooks are very expensive to make, and so
Hmm.
I think it's rare for an indie press to spend that kind of money, and so I think Candy Cane was kind of testing the waters to um, see like the financial efficacy of doing the audiobook.
Hmm.
It's such a great Elizabeth Rogers did an amazing job with it. I don't think there are any plans at the moment to do an audiobook for the sequel yet, but yeah, it I'm grateful that I have that as an option for folks to
Yeah.
experience the story.
I think it's funny because I'm like, well, now I feel like you don't have to do, I love Melonhead Mayhem. I love Cicada. Teleportasm was phenomenal. I'm sure the rest of them will be great. But I feel like, so they would probably be great on audiobook. But now I feel like, Alan, if you're listening again, the only one that deserves one is this one, just because if someone wants to read both of them, now they get the audiobook of one and not the audiobook of the next one. That's where my plea is. It's for those people who are audiobook heavy, that
Yes.
they might not read the second one now because it's not available in audiobook. But I understand there's a cost to it. There's analysis, there's all that stuff that goes into it too. It's not just a simple thing in an independent publisher. It makes it a little harder in that
Right.
sense too. And I would also recommend, I don't know how that works either, but Libro.fm doesn't have it on there, but that's a very, very good independent place for
Oh, awesome.
audiobooks. And so I would pitch that idea too. But I've got Alan's email. I can email
Yeah, exactly.
him. I'll make
You're
my
doing
plea to
better than I
Alan.
do. All I know is that Curse of the Reaper audiobook is now on Spotify Premium, which is pretty rad because the accessibility now is like
That's awesome.
great.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those like the funny thing is I know a lot of audiobook readers, including myself, who buy the physical novel and still sometimes read do both. Like I own
Yes.
every audiobook that basically I would say a good 90% of the audiobooks that I own, I also own the physical copy of the book. And
Yeah.
so like that's just a second purchase too. Like that's just a second person like buying the book. Like
Yeah.
it's a cool thing in that sense because I do a lot of you probably heard, but I'm doing a lot of hybrid. So I like listen to an audiobook while I'm doing dishes, but I'll read the book before I go to bed. And so buying it twice basically to read it in audiobook and in physical book. But yeah, it's a I'm hoping for a sequel so that I could, or a sequel audiobook so I can listen to both of them. Because I
Yeah.
also feel like it's a different, I don't know, you can take it differently. And so I feel
Yeah.
like hearing someone's inflection, someone's maybe potential accents or where they say words or say names, it
Yeah.
helps kind of figure out a little, I don't even know if sometimes I hear them say names and I'm like, I don't even know if the person narrating this knows if that's the actual way to say
Right. Yeah.
name. But yeah, so sometimes I'm like, oh, that's actually how you say it, or the town or whatever it may be. And so audiobooks to me, it's not the same as reading it or physically reading it, but like, I don't know, it gives you more. So if you're going to read it again, I can understand listening to the audiobook and then reading the physical copy for your second time, or the
Yeah.
opposite. And so I think I might listen to the audiobook the second time. We'll see.
Yeah.
It's out there. But not only do you have two killer VHS books, which again, I want to reiterate that Candy Cane Kills is available now at Shortwave Publishing. So grab that, but also order Candy Cane Kills Again, the second slaying, which again, I keep on wanting to write slaying like the slay ride
Yes.
for some reason. I don't know why, but I'm like, I'm kind of glad you didn't do that because I feel like that would be just over the top corny.
Yes.
We released a new flavor at my brewery in hard seltzer. And it was blackberry, and it's in collaboration with University of Maine, which is the Black Bears. And the number of people were like, "You could have done blackberry," and I'm like, "We didn't want to go that corny. We did not
Yeah.
want to go that corny. I would blackberry." But I'm glad you didn't do it. But it was just kind of funny. But Candy Cain Kills Again, the second slaying hits November 12th, but you can pre-order it. And I'll tell you right now, little hint: if you pre-order it from Shortwave Publishing's website, you'll get it early because Alan's very good at sending them out so that you make sure you get it on release date, which usually means you get it about a week in advance. So if you want it faster than anybody else, order it directly from Shortwave. If you don't care or whatever, bookshop.org is a good place because it helps independent bookstores, or pre-order it with a local bookstore and say, I really want this. And then they can get in touch with Alan and so on and so forth, and distribution and all that stuff. But Shortwave Publishing's website, you likely will get it early. There's just a little tip for you guys out there.
Yeah, and there's also some extra goodies, like you mentioned, the membership card, but specifically with this book, we had some prayer cards made up, which I wrote a Hail Candy prayer. Yep, you got one there.
Yeah.
And then we're also going to be including signed book plates.
There you go.
For all pre-orders. So
do that. Pre-order it. Yeah. Pre-order it. Yeah. I think people probably think of a broken record when I say this. It helps so much when you pre-order things. Like it drastically helps with people and so on. So like just pre-ordering things, you know you're going to buy it, just pre-order it and get it out of the way. But it's November 12th, just reminding everybody that you have another book coming out that I want you just to quickly touch on because it's coming out in 2025. But you announced a new book coming from Poison Pen Press. What's that all about?
Yeah, so this will be a full-length novel with Poison Pen coming in fall 2025. And it is called Breathe In, Bleed Out. And it is pitched as Midsommar meets Scream because it's about a group of friends who go to this remote spiritual healing retreat, kind of off the grid experience in Joshua Tree, California. And a mysterious slasher starts picking them off one by one and killing their vibe. So this was such a fun book to write, and I'm really thrilled that it landed at Poison Pen. I feel like they have a really great kind of mix of thriller and horror on their docket, and they really understood what the book was and kind of just encouraged me to lean into that because it is a bit more of a locked room murder mystery, but then with those gory slasher kills that I can't not do.
Of course.
And so yeah, I'm really, really thrilled that one found a home and will be out next year.
That's exciting. And so fall of 2025, which it seems like now you're just going to come out with your book around the fall time, which is fine with me. It's great,
Seems like a good time.
You keep a good time. But no, I'm excited for that. I'm excited to dive into another novel, full-length novel from you. And I know a lot of your readers are as well, because Curse of the Reaper was phenomenal. And I know a lot of people are out there for that. And so Poison Pen is phenomenal. And they've reached out actually recently because they saw that multiple people picked books of theirs for our horror novels of the year, or horror novels that people like, writers that like the horror novels. And they were like, hey, would you like to read some of our books? So I was like, sounds good to me.
Hey, that's good to hear. They've got their ear to the ground and they're seeing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I got in the mail Blood on Her Tongue.
Yes.
Because you and along with Josh Winning both recommended reading that. And so
great.
Yeah, I'm like, those two names I can't not. Actually, that's all I got. I think like I want to do this now every year just to get books to add to my TBR because like last year I feel like half the books I read right after that horror week were all books that like Daniel Krauss, was a Stephen Graham Jones, and Adam Caesar all picked. I was like, oh, I haven't read that book. I haven't heard about that book. And that's why I put all of them on my list. The same thing this year. I was like, okay, cool. And I got all these books to read because everybody recommended it.
I love that. I love that, like paying it forward on, because I think that was, Stephen Graham Jones had recommended Curse the Reaper, and that's how you and I connected. And just like, that's one thing I love about the horror writing community is everybody's just like fully supporting each other and the books that they love and the writers that they're connecting with. So
it's actually kind of funny because I didn't even realize that I knew Josh Winning told me that they put the publisher put a pull quote from our review on the back of Heads Will Roll. And so I was like, oh, that's phenomenal. I can't wait. And it wasn't until like after I showed my wife it that she read it. She goes, look right above it. And they actually also put on the back of the book that Stephen Graham Jones picked Heads Will Roll as one of the books in my horror picks. And I'm like, oh my
No
gosh, they put
way.
two things on the back of it. And I was like, that is such a random thing. It's just a random list that I put out there and it ended up on the back of a book. I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. I'll take it.
It
But yeah,
has, yeah, man.
yeah,
This stuff has real impact, like
yeah,
to raise awareness, and it's so appreciated. And it's it's cool because we're all just fans. So like we're all just
exactly.
like kind of shouting about the stuff that we love and getting to support it. And like I said, at the start of like rising tide lifts all boats. Like
Yeah.
success in horror means we get more horror, and it's really rad.
And so you have a book coming out. You have Candy Cain Kills Again coming out on November 12th. You have the book coming out in the fall, and you're teaching. Is that what you're focused on right now? Is writing? And obviously, you're probably gonna work on another project after your book in the fall. But like, are you doing any TV stuff? Are you trying to do any? Are you just backing away? What's your other stuff that you're doing outside of writing books
Yeah,
and teaching?
so yeah, I'm still doing, short stories for like anthologies. So I have
Okay.
a short story coming in Punk Goes Horror anthology from Trueborn Press, William Sterling editing. Super fun writing a story based on a dashboard confessional song, Screaming Infidelities, and a couple other that haven't been announced yet that I was invited to write short stories for. And I love doing short stories, just kind
Mhm.
of, it's a very different approach for me. I don't outline it, it's more discovery based. But yeah, on the film and TV front, it's mostly my focus is writing the books and the short stories, and then I have agents who kind of shop them around. So I
Yeah.
have a Curse of the Reaper is in development. It's been optioned. It's getting set up at a studio. There's a writer director, but it's Hollywood, so it's kind
Mhm.
of just I have learned to not to just put it out of my head at
Yeah.
this point and just wait and see if anything keeps manifesting. And I have another project in development, but it's all for me. The focus has been on writing
Yeah.
the books
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
stories. Although I had wrote a script adaptation for Candy King Kills that we were shopping on with the sequel now, kind of doing um, another run around
Mhm.
of starting to package that. But yeah, it's fun now having I worked in film and TV for years before writing books, but now I feel like I'm coming back to it with a very different
Mhm.
approach an author.
I think it's kind of funny. People always talk about, in the book world, comic book world, about options and all that stuff. And I laugh because it's like either happens, like either Curse the Reaper gets made in 2 years or 3 years, or it's 10 or 15. Like there's no
Yep.
ever like 6 year plan, 7 year plan. It's like always one of these things. And I talked to Jay Bon and Singa, who came on to talk about the Killer's Game, and that took 30 years from the
Whoa.
day it was optioned for the first time till it hit theaters in September. It took 30 years for his book to come out. And he says the only benefit to that is that it obviously the option ran out. So it was optioned
Yeah.
multiple times, which means he kept on getting checks for it. So he's like, he'd get a check on his desk and he'd be like, what is this? And they're like, oh, it's someone optioned your book movie again. He's like, oh, cool. You can cash it. It
Yep.
was like, that was the only thing that was great about it was that was people paying money for things and then not making it. So it was like, whatever. But finally it
Yep.
came out and he's finally happy about that. But yeah, I think it's one of those things that like I was looking at something else. I forget what it was. That I was like, wow, they're actually already making that into a movie. And it was like 2 years after the book came out.
Right.
And I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. And then there's things like J-Bon and Singa where it's 30 years. I'm like, it's never like there's never a real good time frame on whether or not you know when your movie's actually gonna be made. I mean,
Yeah.
Adams, I believe, is in post-production. Adam Caesar's Clown in the Cornfield. I think it might be done, honestly, or close to being done. So we're
Yeah.
hoping to see a date on that one coming soon. But yeah,
Yeah. Very excited to see that one. It's and I know like Paul Tremblay, like Head
yeah.
Full of Ghosts has been
Yes,
optioned and in development with big names for, the last decade or so. But then he has movies made as well,
yes.
like
And
Night of
in
the
between,
Cabin.
it's
But
like yes,
yeah, you just never know, and you have no authors really have no control
yeah.
over that side of things. So I've heard many a seasoned author just say, take the money and run when it
Yes,
comes to the
exactly.
options. Just like,
And then the other side of it is the creative side of it. It's some of it's like Keith Rosen was saying that Fever House was optioned, and he was like, if someone asked him, "Do you get to tell them what to do? What's it like? What's it going to be like?" He's like, it's theirs now. Like
Yeah.
I like you do whenever you do it, you do it. If you want my input, I'll be a consulting writer on it, consulting producer on it, and but now it's yours. So I can't. You bought it from me to make into a movie. I unless there's other stipulations in there that you get to go on as a writer. Like he's like I whatever. It's not my problem anymore. It's their thing. So I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's a good
And for
mindset to
me,
have because
yeah, I think it depends on what the project is,
yeah,
but like for me, Curse of the Reaper, the writer director who said they wanted to adapt it, I'm just such a fan of that I was like, great. I'm not gonna try to angle
yeah,
in and say I have to adapt it myself. Like I've already told the story, so I'd
yeah.
rather see your version of it. And I'm a consulting producer on it, but it's not like I'm interfering in any sort of
No.
way. But with Candy Cain Kills, I was like, I kind of was already seeing this as a movie. Like it's such an
Yeah.
easy adaptation that one I'm taking a different approach to.
Yeah.
Um,
And it depends on the project. It's one of those things that like yeah, and you mentioned that with the whole creator or writer director being someone you appreciate and respect, they have your phone number. They'll call or someone in their team has your phone number. They'll call you if they have a question about something specific in the book. But otherwise, yeah, sometimes you just have to go. You wrote the book to be a book, right? Like that's what you did. You wrote the book for originally to be in on pages in an audiobook format and someone can read it that way. The secondary part of that is the adaptation is not why you originally went into writing Curse of the Reaper. Well, kind of. Yeah, I know you write scripts and things like that, but I'm saying it's like
yeah,
the book itself at this moment, now that it's been published, that's what you did it for. And
yeah,
so whatever happens after that, I can see being like a whatever, not whatever, but you know
yeah.
what I mean.
No, and that the book will always exist, and that's something I'm
Yeah.
grateful for coming from the world of screenwriting, where projects, even if they do get made, my original screenplay usually isn't exactly what makes it to the
Mhm.
screen at the end of the day. Or projects that never got made that
Yeah.
I wrote a script and it's just nobody ever gets to see it. But with books, gratefully, it's like, well, my vision always exists no matter what. So I'd rather see somebody else
Yeah.
tell their spin on it.
Watch Dismissed, people.
Oh yeah. A case where not all of it made it to the
I
screen as well. But there's things.
it was it's one of those things. It's like I liked it. It was I don't know. It's still I don't know if I'll ever watch it again, Brian. But like
That's
I
okay.
watched it. Like it's checked it off. It's one of those crazy things. I because I told people like I watched some things before I to talk to you, obviously, and I did that when I talked last time with Dismissed. And I meant to do it because David Goodman was on last week, and I
Oh
meant to
yeah,
do it with he wrote episodes of Wings back in the 90s. And my
that's
mom and dad used
wild.
to watch that show all the time. And I was like, oh, I've got to go back. And then I couldn't figure out where to watch it. I was too busy and so on and so forth. But I told him I was like, I gotta watch it because I think they're free on Pluto.tv or something like that. And I was like, I'm gonna watch some Wings episodes because I've seen all the Family Guy
Yes.
episodes that he's wrote in Futurama and Orville. But I was like, the Wings TV show, yeah, that's where it's at.
Yeah, deep cuts only. That's great.
But yeah, so Candy Cane Kills is available. Grab that. Candy Cain Kills Again is coming November 12th. Pre-order that at Shortwave Publishing right now. And then be on the lookout. How soon does a book? It's still this publishing world is crazy to me. I mean, how soon will a pre-order link go up for that? Like, will it be months and months and months before you actually get a pre-order?
That's a good question. Yeah, for the next book, Read and
Yeah,
Bleed Out. Yeah, it's yeah, it's coming out fall next year, so hopefully by spring
yeah,
we'll have the cover and pre-order.
yeah,
My dream would be by the time StokerCon hits, which is like late May, early June.
yeah,
I think it's definitely June this year. I hope that there will be arcs available for StokerCon, but it's trippy to think of that because yeah, the time everything takes is so wild, and I'm already writing my next book, so it's always like promoting the book that's coming out this year, thinking
yeah.
about the book that's coming out the year after while writing the next book. It's just, yeah, always kind of three
StokerCon
different.
2025 is mid-June and it's in Connecticut, which makes me so happy because it's in New
Yes.
England. It's a couple hour drive. My parents live in Hartford, right outside Hartford. I'll just drive down. I'll stay with them. This is gonna be amazing. I'm gonna go
Oh,
to
that's
StokerCon this
smart.
year. It's gonna be so much fun.
Yeah. My
And so
folks
yeah,
are I grew up in North Jersey, so I'm going to be
so
going back and staying with them and then driving because it's, yeah, 2 hour drive or something.
yeah,
But yeah, it'll be awesome.
that's I get excited for that to do that. But yeah, so yeah, grab all those and grab Curse of the Reaper as well. Available. Is that available in paperback yet?
So it's allegedly coming fall 2025 as well. It's only taken 3 years since the publication of the hardcover, but Different publishers take different approaches, I guess. Yeah. Right now
So
it's only available in hardcover and audiobook. Like I said, the audiobook is on
yeah.
Spotify, but hopefully we'll see that paperback next year. And in an ideal world, there will be a film announced to help as well. But
Yes. Yeah.
we'll
I always laugh because I think it happened to Daniel Kraus this year too, where the Whalefall paperback released like a week after Pay the Piper released. And I was like, that doesn't make it easy for you to promote these things or anything like that. Hey, you guys have
Yeah.
limited income. Cool. Go buy both of my books that I have come out this week.
Yeah, ideally you want to kind of stagger them and have
Yeah.
some kind of strategy there. Yeah.
But it also doesn't help us to do different publishers, all that stuff too. It's all
Yeah.
difference in that stuff too. But yeah, but I highly recommend grabbing all of the Killer VHS books. So why not, when you're on
Yes.
Shortwave's website, if you haven't read any of them, just buy them all. There's 5. And Cicada just came out in September, which is absolutely phenomenal by Tanya Pell, as well as we talked on here with Joshua McMillan about Teleportasm, and then obviously Alex Epstein's Melonhead Mayhem, and then your two Candy Cain books are all amazing. But if you have to pick any, if you have a limited income and you can only buy 2, buy these Christmas ones because it's Christmas season. You can buy the rest of them later.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. It's such a rad series to be a part of. And the ones that have been announced for next year, I'm just like,
Yep.
yes, we've got Patrick Bard and Laurel
Yep.
Hightower and Joshua Hull. Like we've got, yeah,
There's some
more goodies
phenomenal
coming.
things coming out too. Yeah. And all their other novellas. I mean, Nat Cassidy's Rest Stop is
It's so
insanely.
good.
You'll never want to pee in a public restroom ever again, but I'll just leave it at that. It's just so good. So
Yes.
check that out. And I believe if anybody follows Alan on Twitter, Alan is very happy about that book coming out. I don't know if anybody can
It's
tell, but
it's doing well. I should also mention I'm going to be doing events. I live in Arizona, so I'll be
yeah,
doing some events here in November. But December, Nat and I will be doing an event at Doylestown Books in Pennsylvania. I might be heading to Brian Keene's Vortex Books and Comics the next
nice.
day, and then Thunder Road Books in New Jersey. So that, yeah, follow me on the Instagrams for updates on any events.
That's awesome. Doylestown. That's Adam Caesar's home
I
area
know. We
right
were
there.
there in August for the Dark Ink event, and
Yeah.
that was my first time finally meeting Adam and getting to hang with friends like Nat and Rachel and
Yeah.
Clay and a bunch of other folks, and just it's a really loving home for the horror community there.
That's awesome. I'm so excited. So yeah, I'm loving everything you're doing. Keep up the good work. I always welcome on the podcast too. So we'll have you back on in the future, and actually it might work out if we have you back on in a year, maybe before that,
Yeah.
but in a year, maybe it'll be a horror week guest next year to help promote your next book because it'll be right around that time. So we'll see. But yeah,
Yeah.
everybody check it all out. Get it when you can, where you can get it. I recommend buying it from Shortwave's website. But if you can't buy it from them, buy it wherever you can buy it because buying it still matters. I know you don't want to help
Yes.
out with these big companies, but like if it's between not buying it or buying it, I'm pretty sure we're all leaning on the idea you should probably buy it. So that's my big thing. The only thing I say don't do is steal it. But other than that, you can, steal other things so you could pay for this. That's my piece of advice here on the podcast. Brian, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to chat with us about Candy Cain Kills and so much more. We'll have you back on in the future. Sounds good?
Thank you so much, Justin. I appreciate it, man. You have a good day.
You too.